I love how if somebody goes offshore on a sailboat, you don't have to go out of your way to know like what phase the moon is in or, what the weather's like. Those things just become completely second nature.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of everybody knowing that Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie just broke up, everybody instead knows that, the moon is waxing and it's going to be full on the 13th or whatever.
Much more interesting.
Much more interesting. Hello, listeners. My name is Ian Ridgeway, and I had the pleasure of sitting down with Tyler McDonald to talk about a project I am working on. I'm creating a nonprofit organization with some friends called Fuel, and we are building a 115-foot steel topsail schooner, or in other words, big sailing ship, with which we will take up to 32 students on expeditions all over the world. Our students will become a part of the crew of the ship and learn to sail while visiting exotic and diverse landscapes and cultures, and receiving college credits and maritime credentials for their time aboard. I hope you enjoy our discussion on the value of this project. For more information or to contribute, please visit our website, thesteelschooner.org. We also have an Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter account with The Steel Schooner as our handle. Thank you for listening, and please enjoy your audio entertainment.
Adventurous, curious, and ambitious, a dreamer and a doer, that is Ian Ridgeway, Captain Ian Ridgeway. I hope you enjoy this conversation we had in his sail-making shop. Thank you, Aaron Mason, for the sound expertise, and Caitlin Watkins for the artwork. This is Ty, your host. Thank you all for listening.
Roll over.
Roll over.
No.
Hey, lay down. Lay down. Roll over. Roll over. All the way. Roll over. Keep going. Yeah.
Oh,
Good girl. That's her new one. She doesn't quite have it down yet.
So yeah, maybe you could just describe the story of how you started out.
Yeah, so I lived on the island in 4th and 5th grade. My mom moved here with me and my two sisters shortly after my parents got divorced. And I got the opportunity to go sailing on Shenandoah for a week. It was one of the first years that Shenandoah was carrying the island schools.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the 5th grade class from each school, which they still do. And basically just immediately fell in love with it. Captain Bob Douglas, who is Shenandoah is his boat. He designed it. He was there every day she was being built, and he's the only person that's sailed the boat for now. They just finished their 53rd season, I believe.
Wow.
So Shenandoah and he are an extension of each other through and through. I mean, they're completely entwined. And I got a piece of it when I was 11, and just basically immediately fell in love with the whole thing. It's just like, you can imagine as an 11-year-old, it's like Peter Pan coming to life or something. Like, it's like, what? This is real? This is a real ship? I get to really, and it was. And I spent a whole week on the boat, and that was it. I was sold.
Yeah.
So I worked for him for 20 years, every summer
And you would be on deck with him as
Yeah, I've kind of moved through the ranks. I started, when I was 11 or 12, I couldn't be trusted to do anything. I couldn't carry any real responsibility, but I started learning the boat and working my way up the ranks. I was first mate for him for 4 years, and then he gave me the chance to captain Alabama, his other 90-foot wooden schooner, which I did for 6 seasons. I got this big exposure to this unique world that really is right out of a fairy tale or storybook.
Yeah.
But is real and exists here in Vineyard Haven.
And you're always doing, moving people's boats around in the off season, or sailing other boats too, right?
Yeah, so because I got my captain's license when I was 19 and had this pretty credible 6 years on Alabama as captain, of a 150 ton schooner, definitely lends some credibility to the resume. So, I've had the chance to do deliveries of private yachts and, race on some other private yachts just from knowing people in the community.
And so your love of the sailing and being around it and being hooked at an early age made you want to, kind of build your life around it in some way.
I mean, that wasn't necessarily a conscious decision. It just kind of evolved that way. There was a significant turning point. I lived in Portland for 6 years and played music out there with a band called Just People who still plays together. And it was really a difficult decision to walk away from that. I would spend my summers sailing Alabama and go out there in the winter and play music with Just People. It was great. But, that wasn't exactly a sustainable model unless the band were to hit it big. And I'd basically run out of money by the end of, by springtime and be absolutely ready to do some sailing and put some cash in the bank. Yeah, so it was tough to walk away from that. That was a really strong brotherhood we built with that band. But I the biggest thing was I was like, well, I know I can have like a pretty honorable career and do well with sailing. And I have a little bit of a leg up because I started so young. So I decided to go actually sailing down to Cuba and Haiti with Nat. He offered a position for me to be sort of his relief captain and do this trip on his schooner. Nat Benjamin, a wooden boat builder and designer, he built his own 55-foot schooner and asked me to come down, south with him, and that was enough incentive for me to say, all right, I think I'm quitting the band, guys, as much as I hate to say it. Yeah. That's kind of when I committed my life full time to sailing.
Yeah. And did you know Nat before that?
I became close with Captain Bob and the Douglases a lot earlier, but Nat was always here. He was right next door building boats, and a lot of young people have still and always have come through and work a couple summers here and there. Interesting people that have decided to take up this trade of learning how to build wooden boats, which what is, a lot of people might say, what's the point? But there is obvious value in that, and so I've known Nat for years. We didn't. It was a lot of times just coming over and being like, hey, this is something that is broken on Alabama and I need help fixing it. And, sometimes it's just a little bit of advice. Sometimes it's like, well, that's out of your scope. We have the tools. We can do it here, or you name it. But we built a relationship out of sort of just sharing the same harbor and community.
Yeah.
And that's always been very warm and welcoming. And I think it's sort of true of anything, but you hit a certain age and a certain skill level where it's not about you anymore. You just want to teach other people. That's all you can do now. He's done it. He's built 70 something boats. He's built his own schooner. He's designed countless boats. They're winning races, all this stuff. And it's kind of the same with Captain Bob. He's sailed Shenandoah for years. You can sail the boat and that's fun, but teaching other people becomes the only source of self-value, I think, at some point.
Yeah. You're passing along the story.
And you kind of, just hit, I think people hit this point if they become a master at something where it's once you've mastered something, there's no point in doing it unless you're teaching other people.
And can you talk a little bit more about the value, the value in creating something that is so kind of old-fashioned or out of the ordinary for the world that we live in?
Yeah. Well, there's, huge value in creating anything with your hands. And that can be anything from building a shed in your backyard to something as intricate and complicated as a wooden boat. But, seeing something through from this, from an idea to a point where it's completely finished, whether it's, anything, you can take up knitting and knit a sweater for a friend, or it can be anything, but anything like that where you kind of build something out of nothing is hugely valuable. And it's, I think it's it's sort of the most important thing, to do as you become a person, is to create things. At the end of the day, Like you want to create something. I think everybody kind of does,
Yeah.
and whether you have the passion or the motivation to do it, that depends on the person. But I think with the right guidance and the right inspiration, that anybody's capable of creating something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's most important. Teaching that to like the next generation. It's like you got to learn how to make something out of your thoughts.
Yeah. And so how does that passion spark the idea for fuel? Can you start talking about that vision?
Yeah. I don't know. It's fuel. This project is a crazy thing, because I'll be the first to admit that it's sort of beyond the scope of rationale.
How would you describe it?
Like we're trying to raise $10 million. We're raising $10 million to build a 240-ton, like a 170-foot long steel topsail schooner that will have 45 bunks. It can sleep 45 people at once, can spend their time on this boat. And it will be capable of sailing anywhere in the world. Easy enough to handle by a relatively small crew. And just the opportunity in creating something like this is what's so magical about it. And we've sort of honed in on the idea of, college students doing college accredited semesters at sea. And there's a lot of things that fed into that plan. But it's certainly not the only thing you can do with the boat. In the lifetime of the boat, you imagine this boat's going to last, as long as it's well cared for, it's going to last 100 years.
Yeah.
And longer than I'm around, basically. So it could do lots of things in its lifetime. College accredited semesters at sea is a strong market for us, and a great way that we can have young people come on the boat, have their lives completely transformed for the better, and spend enough time on board for that transformation to take place.
Yeah.
Like they're gonna, a college semester, full semester is 14 weeks. So these students will be on for something like 14 weeks, and that allows you enough time to like start a trip in the Mediterranean, sail down the west coast of Africa and across to the Caribbean and visit, 15 countries in your 14 weeks, and go home and have seen potentially 3 continents.
Yeah.
It's like, that's cool.
That's the coolest thing ever.
That's the coolest thing ever.
Who would not want to do that?
Right. That's how I see it.
And other than just the learning experience, the transformative experience of just living on a boat and traveling, do you have an idea of what you'll be teaching? Like what the classes will be? Yeah,
well, that's something that we're working on big time now. Casey, who's a member of the team, is doing her master's degree at UNH in outdoor education, and she has been, her and Kendall, a graduate as an undergrad of outdoor education at UNH. They have been tasked with writing the curriculum, and the ball is just starting to roll on that. My vision is for it to be as much about sailing and experiencing the boat as possible. I think that if a person can come on board and just learn how to sail, learn how to splice line, how to, how block and tackle works, how much strength they have in their body by just leaning back on these lines to raise the sails, and just like so much like self-discovery, but also like practical knowledge, like, this is the right tool to use for this job, and this is the right tool to use for that job. And, a lot of people don't even know what most of the common tools are called, and like these are basic things that you learn on board a boat. Not to mention the closeness to the natural environment, which I think is so huge. I love how if somebody goes offshore on a sailboat, it's not you don't have to go out of your way to know like what phase the moon is in, or what the weather's like, it's or what it's going to be like. It becomes like so crucial to all your everyday living that those things just become completely second nature. Instead of everybody knowing that Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie just broke up, everybody instead knows that the moon is waxing and it's going to be full on the 13th or whatever.
Much more interesting.
And we're all caught up in those silly distractions.
Yeah.
We can't help it. It's something about our social nature, the way our brains are wired. But if you get people out of that, if you can shake them awake and put them in a natural environment, people respond to it big time.
Yeah.
So yeah, my vision for the educational aspect of the boat and the sort of classes is I want to make it as much about sailing and the boat as possible. So if we can come up with clever ways that a student can get 16 credits and basically just be learning to sail, we may have to add in, that would be ideal. We may have to add in okay, we're not just, learning where the North Star is to navigate, we're also doing a full astronomy class.
Yep.
That'd be worthwhile. Weather and climatology, also hugely important for sailing.
Yeah. Navigation, geography.
Leadership.
Yeah.
Those are all things. I'd like it to be as much about sailing as possible, but to be able to, extract from the experience the lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. And the process.
Transferable.
Yeah, and the process of being on board, with a team, that's interesting about leadership is that no matter what, you're going to have to, by nature of living on this boat, figure out how to be a good teammate.
Yeah.
And whether you struck that in the form of a class or not, that's undeniably going to be something that everybody takes away from the experience.
Right.
Which will be the process will be the real transformation, regardless of what you quote curriculum
right.
is or how many points or credits they get. It's sort of hard to quantify how much they'll get out of it compared to how much they'll get in a traditional classroom at college.
Right. Well, I think you and I both know, and most people probably do, that have had any kind of education outside the classroom, but their time on board and a week spent or a summer spent for a crew member on Shenandoah is I got off that boat. You can easily say that you learn more in one summer than you have in 18 years of schooling, or whatever. It's not 18, it's K through 12, 13 years of schooling. But figuring out how to justify it is the hard part. How we can tell the outside world that these students have actually gained something.
Yeah.
And it's so obvious that they have, but you have to find a way to make that transferable to the rest of the world.
To frame it into academia in a point system.
Right.
Yeah. So what is it about those experiences of stepping? Is it just stepping outside your comfort zone? Is it being outside and where most people aren't outside and don't have these skills, or is just the kind of the novelty of the adventure? What do you think allows you to learn so much in these situations that push your comfort zone, do you think?
Well, I think you touched on it right there, the fact that it's pushing your comfort zone.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know, in a classroom, it's easy kind of to just, I remember just not completing assignments, not doing my homework, and I'd have to go in and, the hardest part of the day was having to, when your teacher comes and grabs the worksheets off of everybody's desk and you didn't do yours, and they look at you come on. Or maybe even ask you to stay after because they want to talk to you about why you didn't do it. Yeah. And that's the most challenging part.
Yeah.
And it's actually a trade-off. Most people choose to complete the worksheet to avoid that.
Yeah.
But, the worksheet isn't hard. It's just a bunch of stuff that you already talked about or you can find in the textbook. I don't know. Being in a real-life environment and being challenged by the elements around you and, trying to figure out how to make a line off around a belaying pin or cleat, and, you think you got it, and then it's all of a sudden a wave hits you in the face. And you're damn it.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the day, you figure it out and you feel better about yourself. And that little moment where you overcame something is with you for the rest of your life in one way or another.
Right. And there's a level of discomfort that comes from living on a boat for people who have never done it.
Sure.
And you can't
absolutely.
You can't fake it. You can't fake whether or not you've learned something when it's such a tangible at least the physical skills of knowing how to sail.
Yeah.
You have to know how to do that or you won't be helpful.
Right.
Versus a worksheet that you can figure out a way to fudge it in a way that is acceptable.
Right.
And there's not much learning happening there other than learning how to beat the system.
Right. Which is, possibly a valuable lesson, but it's sort of the what our whole educational system, I hate to say it, but it's almost all propped up on that. Yeah. It's figuring it out how to get to the next step. And at the end of the day, I mean, once you get into graduate school or even undergraduate, you're definitely learning, things of substance and value. And, at one point or another, I had some teachers. I think around junior year of high school, I started signing up for whatever kind of accelerated classes just because I wanted to see how it would play out. And I realized that I had access all of a sudden to these really great teachers that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't decided to sign up for these classes. Yeah. And that's sort of when my academic career changed, because I, went from a C&D whatever student, like, please, like, I can't wait till class is over, to, A's and B's, and carried that through college and stuff. And it's just, I don't know, but once you get up there, you do start having like a much more valuable education than early high school, junior high and stuff, which is, it just feels like you're being kind of given there. It's like they're just trying to keep you occupied. That's what it feels like.
And like alternative education programs seem to be sprouting up, and the value, quote, value of traditional education seems to be coming more and more into question and exposed as, is it the right way to teach people, realizing that everyone kind of learns on their own, in their own way. So what intrigues me about Fuel is that it's all process oriented. Like, just by doing it, and by going through the process, therein lies the value. Therein lies the education.
Right.
And you'd think it would be an attractive thing for a university, an existing university, to latch onto as a way to differentiate themselves and to have a more interesting offering for people that know that they learn better through experience.
Yeah. And experiential education worldwide is gaining momentum. So, like, it's one of those things where universities should be trying to latch onto these things. It's like you want programs like that, not just to stand out, but also to be like with it.
Yeah.
Because that's what people are looking for more and more. And people are a lot of, brilliant minds arguing about how valuable it is too.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely true.
Right. And with the popularity of programs like Knowles, and people who aren't even students, who are kind of going out of their way and paying money to have these experiences outdoors.
Right.
That's definitely a promise, like, or at least a validation of the idea, is that people have a desire for this kind of thing, and they couldn't do it on their own, like, especially if they don't know anything.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a dream to go sailing around the world, but unless you have someone to show you how to do that,
right,
you can't.
Yeah.
And so people just leave it as an abstract kind of daydream.
Right.
But this is just like Shenandoah was for you. This is like you are actualizing the dream for somebody.
Yeah.
By giving them the platform.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Totally.
It's so cool. So where did the idea, when did you start thinking about or formulating this idea, like this specific idea?
Well, Captain Bob Douglas was a huge, of Shenandoah, and he owned Alabama too. A huge mentor for me, big, father figure in my life, and also one of my best friends. And at one point, he talked about this other ship he had designed, and Shenandoah is obviously to anyone who spends time on board, is an exceptional boat. Not just, for the obvious reasons, like she doesn't have an engine, and she's 170 tons, sleeps somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 people, I think 40 bunks on board. And this boat is sailing around without an engine. That's the only boat like it in the world, I'd say. There's a few up in Maine that don't have engines too. But I think I got myself derailed a little bit. What were we talking about?
I was asking where the idea sparked.
Oh yeah, so he showed me the plans for this other topsail schooner he had designed. A topsail schooner, a schooner has two masts or more, but a topsail schooner has square sails on her foremast, which usually people think, oh, it's a pirate ship, but squares are an incredible thing. They're ideal for downwind sailing, so trade routes. Still to this day, if you were going to build a historical boat to do like ocean trading routes, you'd want a square rigger because the sails don't move around when you're sailing downwind. They're sort of locked in place. anyway, so he had this schooner with these squares, and he had another one that he designed, and whoa, what? There's another Shenandoah that's never been built, sort of. And he showed me the plans, and it's really, it's sort of in some ways it's an upgrade from Shenandoah. I don't know. Shenandoah is very limited to like a coastal route for a number of reasons. This boat can sail anywhere. It's slightly bigger in many ways. 70 tons bigger if you want to put a yardstick to it. Or I should say a scale. But yeah, I was immediately enthralled by these plans, and I started thinking like, whoa, like this is really cool. Like what? Immediately it's like, what's it going to take to build this? Like, and Captain Bob, why didn't you build it? And he I think he didn't give me a straight answer ever, but my extrapolation is that he at one point tried to sell Shenandoah, and his plan would have been to sell Shenandoah so he could build this boat, because you can't have you don't need two, and the obviously the money from selling one would help go toward the other one, but he couldn't bring himself to sell Shenandoah because he loved that boat so much, and so this schooner never got built, and from then on I started thinking. This was probably 15 years ago, but I started thinking about the boat just a little bit here and there. And I started thinking about it more and more. And then, at times I would be frustrated with, my job in some way or anything. And I'd think, oh man, if I was in charge, I'd do it this way. And that's just what people do. I think that's what everybody does, like even for really trivial things. But then I started thinking more and more about how I would do it and how I would build this company around this boat and what it would be like, and that became more and more important of a concept to me. And then I started really analyzing how the rest of the industry did it as a benchmark. How do these people do it? How does this program do it? Which programs are succeeding? Which are failing? Why are so many programs failing with this tall ship idea? And by the time it came, by the time I got some encouragement from a couple people to pursue this dream, I already had a lot of it sort of figured out in my head. So I got to work, and wrote a business plan over the winter, and started coming up with ways to legitimize myself and my ideas. And and more it becomes more and more real every day.
Yeah. And what stage are you at now? Fundraising.
Well, we got our first 5-figure donation, which was what we were asking for our seed money, and that sort of allows us to create the company, build the website, shoot a promo video, pay the naval architect for the bid package he's created. So that's what's going to go out to shipyards to get estimates on what the boat is going to cost to build, and some initial stability calculations. You want to know if does this design work? Is it actually going to be like a safe and strong boat? Which I know it will, but you want to have numbers, and those kinds of things. So very soon we'll be a legitimate 501c3 nonprofit in the state of Massachusetts. We'll have our name trademarked. We'll have a website and a promo video explaining the project, and we'll be able to move into our next phase, which will be just to get the money together that it will cost to run the campaign to raise the rest. So we're looking for $10 million to build the boat. My hope is that it's going to cost around $8 million. You never know. You want a cushion, because a lot of times these projects go over budget, and then halfway through building the boat and people aren't, the shipyard's not getting paid and people start getting upset. So you want to have a cushion. Yeah. And worst case scenario, if you want an educational nonprofit especially, but any nonprofit, you want an endowment fund. Right. You want to have money set aside in a fund that, the principal can't be touched, and you're taking money from the interest. And so, in an ideal world, the boat costs something between $6 and $8 million, and the rest of the money goes into an endowment. And that that's for a secure future for the organization.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. And then once it becomes a real thing, students will apply per semester, and you'll take 40, 45.
Right. So we can take up to 32 passengers.
Okay.
We're in conversation with the University of New Hampshire right now, and the head of outdoor education there, whose name is Mike Gass. Great guy, really supportive of the program, and he's trying to put together like a committee basically that we can take to the president of the university to talk about a partnership and running our credits through them and having them, embrace this program as part of their what they offer on campus or through the school. And so I got derailed. What was the question?
The question was just about the process of applying and how many students.
Yeah, so we'll be able to, where I was going is what they have told us is most likely we're going to need to have some professors on board, at least for certain subjects. So that might lessen the number of students we can take. Let's say it's 30. But students will be able to apply, the cost is going to be comparable or less than the average tuition for a college student in the U.S. for a semester is $25,000 now. Or sorry, no, it's like 27 and change, 27,400 or something
for one
like
semester.
That. For one semester. And that's taking into account that, private schools can go as high as 60,000 or 80,000. And public schools, if you're paying out of state tuition, are around 26, 25, 24. And then in-state, is usually more around like 12 or 11. But so if you average that out, what we aim to charge is $25,000 for a student to come for a semester. So it's comparable, in some cases less than what you pay because all of your expenses are covered. You're not paying tuition plus room and board plus textbooks plus whatever else, drinking. So $25,000 seems more than reasonable to me. And hopefully we can have enough support behind the organization, and I think we will by the time the boat is built, because we're raising so much money. It's going to require a lot of awareness and a lot of generosity, and so my hope is that we'd even be able to provide scholarships through the organization, so not everybody has to pay $25,000. People that can't afford it can go for less.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've gotten this far along, but what would you hope for in a student and an applicant? What would you be looking for?
Just somebody with an open mind that wants to be there.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody whose parents are forcing them to go and they don't want to go at all. I mean, the end of that story could end well.
Yeah.
But you mostly just want someone who wants to be there.
Yeah.
Like anything. It's like, do you want to be here? At the end of the day, that's the question. Do you? Is this something you want or not? Because if it isn't, go do something else.
Yeah.
But if it is something you want, we have endless potential to affect you, to change you for the better, for us to be changed by you. It's not a one-way street.
Yeah.
We learn things from the people we teach as well.
And would there be other faculty on board?
Yeah, so there'd be most likely about a captain, a cook, a chief mate, an engineer, a bosun, and like 4 crew. All the crew and officers, I'm hoping, will certainly be involved in the teaching as well. And then we may or may not need some professors on board.
Gotcha.
That are part of that too.
Nice. Can I apply?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see why not. That is a interesting question though, because we focused around college students just because it seems like a very viable market and it's a good age to have like a strong impact on somebody, I think. But it's certainly not limited to that, and I don't want the program to be designed that way either. Gap year students are another one. In between college and high school, if you can do something, if you're not ready to go to school and you can do something but also earn credit for it, then when you do go to school, you've already completed a semester. Mm-hmm. But even people that have already gone to school or never gone to school, and even if they have no use for 16 or 18 credits, college credits, through a university, can still gain so much from the trip. So as much as we're going to try to hone in and target that market, I really, at the end of the day, want people to feel like, college student or not, you can go on this trip and gain a lot from it.
Yeah, keep the doors open.
Yeah.
So you'd be going all over the world?
Yeah, the plan is probably in the first year, this is my vision. The boat would sail all over the world, and some years you may want to stay closer to home, then that would mean a couple transatlantic trips, hopping around the Mediterranean, whatever, Caribbean and back. But I'd like for the boat to be able to sail continuously around the world, at least for some stretches of time. I want each semester to have a different experience. So, a student that comes on for the fall semester could sail, down through the Caribbean. Let's say we start the trip in New England, they sail down through the Caribbean. That's the right time of year for that kind of trip. After hurricane season's over, you head down about early November and sail through the Caribbean, Central America, San Blas Islands, north coast of South America, and maybe through the Panama Canal and Galapagos Islands. And then so that's one semester. The next students fly down and meet the boat, who knows, Ecuador or something, and you sail across the Pacific for that semester, which is a big haul. And then you get to explore Southern Pacific Islands, who knows, Fiji, New Zealand. And then the next trip would get on board and you'd continue around the globe that way. I'd like to do that because it opens the opportunity also for students to stay on for more than one semester. So like a student could stay on for a whole year and it's not going to be the same as, at all as the previous trip.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could have like a different philanthropic endeavor or component to each place that you interact with or
Absolutely.
visit. Yeah.
Inevitably, you want that. There's so much that can be done by just bringing like supplies and stuff, and it's a big boat. We'll have plenty of storage, like to load up with like school supplies and visit some less wealthy countries, or it could be anything.
Yeah.
There's limitless potential in that realm.
Yeah.
And I can't even start to focus on that because there's so many other balls up in the air right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would certainly see this and love for it to be. To have a humanitarian element, also just because there's so much to be gained from that for students and the crew.
Yeah. What a story, and what an interesting way to add a whole new arm onto the value proposition of what you're creating.
Yeah.
It's like,
right.
Connecting different cultures through this educational boat.
Right.
That is attracting talent and eager minds that want to expand their experience and learn about the world directly.
Yeah.
It's so cool. It's such a cool story, and it's such an admirable ambition.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, yeah, it's ambition is almost an understatement. It's a huge hill to climb. But it's like you can be overwhelmed by anything, even pretty small tasks. And this is a huge one, but it's all things require steps to make happen or complete. So you just try not to get too ahead of yourself and be like, okay, what do I need to do like this week? Like what things need my attention now? And before you know it, you've got money in the bank, you've got a real company that's like legally recognized. You can take tax deductible donations, and it's all just by like completing steps.
Yeah.
I was having a great conversation with a friend of mine who's also a visionary. He's starting a company that is going to be very successful. And we've just always enjoyed each other's company because we're both just always fired up about stuff. And we both like share this opinion that it's just like you can always get from A to B as long as you take all the steps.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, whether you want to be a band playing Madison Square Garden or whatever, somebody's done that before. Somebody's built a boat before. Somebody's, created a university from nothing before. That all these things in a way have been done, and those people who have done these things took certain steps. And so as long as you complete these steps, and they may not be the exact same steps as the person before you, but you'll get there. Yeah. Like there is a path to this schooner, and it existing, and it sailing, and it affecting thousands of university students, and me being 70 years old and being like, all right, I've had enough. Someone else is going to sail it now. There's a path to that point, and all you got to do is take each step down the path, and you'll get there.
Yeah, amen. And you can visualize the steps.
Right.
Like,
that helps.
Objectively, you can see what needs to happen, and then you piece a little step by step along the way, and then all of a sudden you're at your goal.
Yeah.
And I think the key thing is like defining priorities, yes, but having this clear vision of what is the end point that you're trying to get to.
Right.
And then that sort of informs the effort you put forth every day to get through these kind of hurdles and hoops and frustrations of everyday life.
Totally.
of trying to create something out of nothing. And yeah, man, I'm excited to see it progress.
Yeah, thanks.
Is there a timeline, like a expected timeline on when you
Yeah, absolutely. And timelines are adjustable, but you'd be dumb not to have one, because you got to have goals and you got to have deadlines, or else nothing ever happens. We're projecting like the boat being done in 4 years, and that includes like a year and a half to raise the money and a year and a half to build it, and then some sort of leeway time in between when we start the campaign and now, just whatever hurdles come our way. But I think 4 years is reasonable.
Yeah.
It can't take you don't want it to take too long, or you'll lose momentum. And the boat could take longer than a year and a half to build, but it could definitely be done in a year and a half, or yeah. So yeah, we are in phase 1 now, which is the creation of the organization and creating the metaphorical foundation, but also literal foundation. And the next phase 2 is the launching of the campaign, being ready to go public with this campaign and really start having everything in place to raise the money, which is a lot of things.
Yeah. And why is this the change that you want to make?
That's a great question. I think that the best thing I can do with who I am, sort of like what I've got, what I have to offer, is to give to other people what was given to me, which was learning how to sail these like traditional boats and like splice line and whatever else, like to pull the masts out of the boat, all these sort of like mechanical, how to skipper this like big schooner, like that's the greatest. My experience on Shenandoah and Alabama was the greatest gift that I've ever been given. And if I can give that to more people, and I have the skills, I know that about myself. I learned enough from Captain Bob and other people that worked for him, that I have the ability to pass those things on. That's like the best thing I can do.
Yeah.
For other people.